In punctuation, the full stop or period is the punctuation mark placed at the end of a sentence. The full stop glyph is sometimes called a baseline dot because, typographically, it is a dot on the baseline. This term distinguishes the baseline dot from the interpunct. The full stop glyph is also used for other purposes. It is often used at the end of an initial letter used to stand for a name, and is sometimes used at the end of individual letters in an initialism. It also has multiple contexts in mathematics and computing, where it may be called dot or point. History. The full stop symbol derives from Aristophanes of Byzantium, who invented the system of punctuation where the height of placement of a dot on the line determined its meaning. The high dot was called a periodos, and indicated a finished thought or sentence. The middle dot was called a colon, and indicated part of the complete thought, while the low dot was called a telia, and also indicated part of the complete thought. In 19th century texts, both British English and American English were consistent in their usage of the terms period and full stop. The word period was used as a name for what printers often called the full point, or the punctuation mark that was a dot on the baseline, and used in several situations. The phrase full stop was only used to refer to the punctuation mark when it was used to terminate a sentence. At some point during the 20th century, common usage diverged, with British English adopting full stop as the more generic term, and American English preserving the more traditional usage. Usage. Full stops are one of the most commonly used punctuation marks. Analysis of texts indicate that approximately half of all punctuation marks used are full stops. Ending sentences. Full stops are used to indicate the end of sentences. Periods after initials. It is usual to use full stops after initials. A. A. Milne, George W. Bush. Abbreviations. A full stop is used after some abbreviations. If the abbreviation ends a declaratory sentence, there is no additional period immediately following the full stop that ends the abbreviation. This is called haplography. Though two full stops might be expected, conventionally only one is written. In the case of an interrogative or exclamatory sentence ending with an abbreviation, a question or exclamation mark can still be added. Abbreviations and personal titles of address. According to the Oxford or U.S.A of Grammar and Punctuation, if the abbreviation includes both the first and last letter of the abbreviated word, as in Mr., Mr. and Doctor, a full stop is not used. This does not include, for example, the standard abbreviations for titles such as Professor or Reverend, because they do not end with the last letter of the word they are abbreviating. Among American dialects, however, the common convention is to include the period after these abbreviations. Acronyms and initialisms. In acronyms and initialisms, full stops are somewhat more often placed after each initial in American English than in British English, but this depends much upon the house style of a particular writer or publisher. The American Chicago Manual of Style now deprecates the use of full stops in acronyms. Mathematics. The full stop glyph is used in the presentation of numbers, but in only one of two alternate styles at a time. In the more prevalent usage in English-speaking countries, it represents a decimal separator, visually dividing whole numbers from fractional parts. The comma is then used to separate the whole number parts into groups of 3 digits each, when numbers are sufficiently large. 1.007, 1002.007, 1,002,003.007. The more prevalent usage in much of Europe, Southern Africa, and Latin America, reverses the roles of the comma and full stop glyph, but sometimes substitutes a space for a full stop. 1007, 1.002, 007 or 1002, 007, 1.002.003, 007 or 1002.003, 007. In countries that use the comma as a decimal separator, the full stop is sometimes found as a multiplication sign. For example, 5, 2. 2 equals 10, 4. This usage is impractical in cases where the full stop is used as a decimal separator, hence the use of the interpunct, 5.2 or 2 equals 10.4. This notation is also seen when multiplying units in science. For example, 50 km/h could be written as 50 kmh/1. Computing. In computing, the full stop is often used as a delimiter, such as in DNS lookups, web addresses, and file names. www.wikipedia.org, document txt, 192.168.0.1. It is used in many programming languages as an important part of the syntax. C uses it as a means of accessing a member of a struct, and this syntax was inherited by C++ as a means of accessing a member of a class or object. Java and Python also follow this convention. Pascal uses it both as a means of accessing a member of a record set, a member of an object, and after the end construct which defines the body of the program. In Erlang, Prolog, and Smalltalk, it marks the end of a statement. In a regular expression, it represents a match of any character. In Perl and PHP, the full stop is the string concatenation operator. In the Haskell standard library, the full stop is the function composition operator. In file systems, the full stop is commonly used to separate the extension of a file name from the name of the file. RISC-OS uses full stops to separate levels of the hierarchical file system when writing path names similar to / in Unix-based systems and / in MIS-DOS-based systems. In Unix-like operating systems, some applications treat files or directories that start with a full stop as hidden. This means that they are not displayed or listed to the user by default. In Unix-like systems and Microsoft Windows, the dot character represents the working directory of the file system. 2 dots represent the parent directory of the working directory. Bourne shell-derived command line interpreters, such as sh, ksh, and bash, use the dot as a synonym for the source command, which reads a file and executes its content in the running interpreter. Telegraphy. The term stop was used in telegrams in place of the full stop. The end of a sentence would be marked by stop, because punctuation costs extra. Punctuation styles when quoting. The traditional convention in American English and in Canada is aesthetic punctuation, or typesetter's quotation, where full stops and commas are included inside quotation marks even if they are not part of the quoted sentence. The style used in the UK, and to a lesser extent in the US, is logical punctuation, which stays true to the punctuation used by the original source, placing commas and full stops inside or outside quotation marks depending on where they were placed in the material that is being quoted. Scientific and technical publications, including in the US, almost universally use it for that reason. The aesthetic or typesetter's rule was standard in early 19th century Britain. Its application was advocated, for example, in the influential book The King's English by Fowler and Fowler. Carefree means free from care or anxiety. Carefree means free from care or anxiety. Before the advent of mechanical type, the order of quotation marks with full stops and commas was not given much consideration. The printing press required that the easily damaged smallest pieces of type for the comma and full stop be protected behind the more robust quotation marks. Typesetter's style still adheres to this older tradition in formal writing. It is taught to American schoolchildren when they learn how to draft prose, and is strictly observed in most books, newspapers, magazines, and journals. References: The Chicago Manual of Style, 15th edition. Hart's Rules for Compositors and Readers at the University Press, Oxford. Spacing after a full stop. There have been a number of practices relating to the spacing after a full stop. Some examples are listed below. One-word space. This is the current convention in most countries that use the ISO basic Latin alphabet for published and final written work, as well as digital media. Two-word spaces. It is sometimes claimed that the two-space convention stems from the use of the monospaced font on typewriters, but in fact that convention replicates much earlier typography. The intent was to provide a clear break between sentences. This spacing method was gradually replaced by the single-space convention in published print, where space is at a premium, and continues in much digital media. One widened space. This spacing was seen in historical typesetting practices. It has also been used in other typesetting systems such as the linotype machine and the text system. Modern computer-based digital fonts can adjust the spacing after terminal punctuation as well, creating space slightly wider than a standard word space. Full stops in other scripts. In some Asian languages, notably Chinese and Japanese, a small circle is used instead of a solid dot, a euro. Notably, in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau usage, the full stop is written at center height instead of on the line. In the Devanagari script, used to write Hindi and Sanskrit among other Indian languages, a vertical line is used to mark the end of a sentence. In Hindi, it is known as Purnaviram in Hindi and Dori in Bengali. Some Indian languages also use the full stop, such as Marathi. In Tamil it is known as Mutrupuli, which means end dot. In Sinhala, it is known as Kundalya, a symbol full stop. Periods were later introduced into Sinhala script after the introduction of paper due to the influence of Western languages. See also Sinhala numerals. Urdu uses the U symbol. In Thai, no symbol corresponding to the full stop is used as terminal punctuation. A sentence is written without spaces, and a space is typically used to mark the end of a clause or sentence. In the Ge'ez script used to write Amharic and several other Ethiopian and Eritrean languages, the equivalent of the full stop following a sentence is the e-arithmetic accent, which means 4 dots. The 2 dots on the right are slightly ascending from the 2 on the left, with space in between them. Encodings, the character is encoded at U+002E full stop. See also, decimal separator, dot, sentence spacing, terminal punctuation, notes. External links, Chicago-style Q&A on one space versus 2 after sentences.